The sun hung low over Millbrook, Ohio, bleeding orange and bruised purple into a sky that could not decide whether to hold on or let go. A warm October wind dragged fallen leaves across the cracked sidewalks of Pine Hollow Street, rattling them against chain-link fences and the rusted hoods of cars that had not moved in years. At the end of that street, past the shuttered laundromat and the liquor store with the burned-out neon, sat an abandoned playground, and through its rusted gate on hinges that shrieked like something dying, a small girl was pushing her way inside. Ivy Sutton was 5 years old. She wore a faded denim dress 2 sizes too big and a pair of pink sneakers that someone else had worn first. In her arms, she clutched a teddy bear the color of weak tea, its left arm hanging by a thread, its button eyes scratched and dim. Its name was Mr. Biscuits. It had been hers for as long as she could remember, and she could not remember far. "It's okay," she whispered to the bear. "We can play here for a little while. Nobody will mind." Her foster home was just 3 blocks up a blue Victorian with a crooked second step. Nora Pritchard was making supper. The kitchen was loud. 6 children, a radio, a pot of chili. Nobody would miss Ivy for 15 minutes. Nobody ever did. She crossed the gravel, her sneakers crunching, and made her way to the swings. The chains were thick with rust. The seats hung crooked like tired old men on a bus stop bench. Ivy climbed onto the one that still looked solid and let her legs dangle. Her feet did not touch the ground. They never did. She hummed. A small tune, plain and round one her real mother had sung to her before real mother became a word people whispered and looked away. Ivy could not remember the woman's face, only the song, the way the notes curled up at the end like a question. "Look, Mr. Biscuits," she said, holding the bear up to the sunset. "Pink and gold, like the inside of a seashell." The bear did not answer. He never did. But his silence was warm. The wind shifted. A cooler gust came down the street carrying the smell of coming winter, of wood smoke from somebody's chimney, of something else too. Something metallic and wrong. Ivy shivered. The streetlights along Pine Hollow flickered on one by one, but their light did not reach the playground. It stopped at the edge as if afraid. Then came the crunch of gravel, not from her, from behind. Ivy turned on the swing chains, groaning. 4 figures stood at the gate. Older children. Their silhouettes cut sharp against the dying light. The tallest one stepped forward, and Ivy knew him before she saw his face. Beckett Rollins, 11 years old and already carrying something broken inside him. He lived in the other foster house, the one on Larkspur Street, where kids came and went like weather. He had hard eyes and his smile never reached them. "Well, look at this," Beckett said. His voice was too calm. "Little baby, all alone." Ivy's feet pressed against the ground, stopping her gentle sway. She pulled Mr. Biscuits tighter against her chest. "I just wanted to swing," she said. "Not your swing." A girl behind him, maybe 12, crossed her arms. "This is our playground." "I didn't know." "Now you do." Beckett stepped closer. The others spread out a slow half circle, blocking the path back to the gate. Ivy's heart began to beat faster. Somewhere inside her chest, behind the ribs, a door she did not know she had swung wide open, and fear walked in. "Please," she said, "I just want to go home." "What's that?" Beckett pointed at the bear. "Nothing. Looks like something. He's my friend." One of the others laughed. A short, cruel sound like a car backfiring. "Talking to toys," Beckett said. "That's for babies." "I'm not a baby, I'm 5. 5 is baby." He moved fast. Faster than she could turn away. His hand shot out and grabbed Mr. Biscuits by the torn arm, and the thread that had been holding the bear together for 3 years gave up. The arm came off in Ivy's fingers. The rest of the bear sailed up into Beckett's grip, held high over his head like a trophy. "Give him back!" Ivy cried. "Come get him!" She jumped down from the swing. Gravel stung her knees where she landed wrong. She reached up. Beckett tossed the bear over her head to a tall boy on her left. The tall boy tossed it back. Ivy ran between them, crying, reaching, and someone stuck out a foot. The ground came up fast. Her palms scraped on the broken asphalt. Dirt filled her mouth. "Stop!" she tried to say. It came out as a sob. Someone pushed her shoulder. Someone else laughed. The bear went back and forth above her like a bird she could not catch. Tears blurred the world into orange and gray, and her knees burned, and the wind kept blowing her hair into her eyes, and the bear kept flying. "Help!" she whispered. Then louder. "Help, please!" Her voice climbed into a scream, small but furious, a 5-year-old voice throwing itself against an empty street. "Somebody help me!" The windows of the houses beyond the playground stayed dark. No porch lights came on. Nobody came. Beckett leaned down. His shadow covered her. "Nobody's coming, baby. Nobody cares." She drew in a ragged breath and screamed again, and this time the sound came from somewhere deeper, from the part of her that remembered 3 different homes and 3 different beds, and a mother whose face had disappeared. She screamed for all of it. And then, in the ringing silence after her cry, something new, far off at first, a low rumble, growing. An engine, deep and heavy, it rolled up Pine Hollow Street like thunder that had gotten lost and was looking for the storm it came from. The older children froze. Beckett's head turned toward the sound. For a moment his face showed something other than cruelty, uncertainty. Ivy sucked in one more breath. "Help!" she cried. "Please!" The engine cut out. A kickstand clicked. Boots hit the pavement. A man walked through the gate. He was tall, taller than any man Ivy had ever seen, or that was how her fear measured him. His jeans were black, his boots heavy, and across the back of his leather vest, embroidered in red and white thread that had faded with weather and time, were 3 words stacked like bricks. Hell's Angels. Millbrook. His arms under the vest were inked in old dark blue tattoos that had softened with years. A silver chain hung at his belt. His beard was salt and pepper, his hair pulled back. His eyes were the color of wet slate, and they were very, very tired. Declan Morrow had been riding home for the first time in 27 years. He had not meant to stop. He had not meant to come anywhere near Pine Hollow Street with its memories of his mother's empty bedroom and his father's empty bottles. But something in the air or in himself had made him slow the Harley, and then coast, and then stop. And now there was a little girl on the ground and 4 older kids standing over her and a teddy bear flying through the air like it was worth nothing. "What's going on here?" he said. His voice did not shout. It did not need to. It came out low and gravelly, carrying across the playground like smoke carries over water, touching everything. The 4 children turned. Their eyes traveled up the boots, up the jeans, up the vest with its feared patches, up to the weathered face and the slate-gray eyes, and their mouths opened a little. The tall boy, the one with the bear, dropped it. Mr. Biscuits landed in the gravel with a soft, sad thump. "None of your business, mister," Beckett said. His voice was trying for tough. It cracked in the middle. Declan stepped forward. 1 step. His boot crunched on the gravel. "I'm making it my business." The 3 other children broke first. They turned and ran, sneakers slapping down the street around the corner and gone. Beckett held his ground for 1 breath longer, then 2. His jaw worked. Something wet caught at the edge of his eye, and he turned his face away to hide it. "Whatever," he muttered. "She's not worth it." He walked past Declan, shoulders hunched, hands in his pockets. At the gate he paused, and for a moment he looked back and his face was not angry anymore. It was something else, something Declan knew. The look of a kid who had been left too many times and had stopped letting anyone see it land. Then Beckett was gone too. Declan lowered himself down onto one knee. His joints popped. He picked up the bare brushed gravel off its fur and held it out. "This yours?" Ivy nodded. She did not move. Her palms were bleeding. "Can I?" he asked, reaching slowly toward her elbow. "Let me help you up." She looked at his hand. It was big, scarred across the knuckles. A tattoo on the back showed a skull with a rose growing out of its eye. Her teacher at the pre-K had told her once that strangers' hands were dangerous, but strangers had never saved her either. She put her small hand in his. He lifted her up as if she weighed nothing. He looked at her scraped knees, at the dirt on her cheek, at the tear in her dress where someone's foot had caught the hem. "You hurt anywhere else, sweetheart?" "Sweetheart." The word came out strange from his mouth, rusty, as if he had not used it in a long time or maybe ever. "They said nobody wants me," Ivy said. Declan Morrow went very still. 27 years ago, on a front porch, 3 blocks from where he now stood, an 8-year-old boy had sat waiting for a mother who did not come home. He had waited 2 days. When the social worker finally arrived, he had been told gently that sometimes mothers leave, that it was not his fault, that someone somewhere would want him. He had not believed it then, and for 27 years he had not believed it since. "They're wrong," he said. His voice came out thick. "Those kids were wrong, and they were being mean. Mean people say things that aren't true." She looked up at him. Her eyes were huge and gray-green, like the underside of a storm. Something in his chest, something he had nailed shut a long time ago with every bolt he owned, creaked. "I'm Ivy," she said. "Ivy Sutton. Declan Morrow. Some people call me Bear." "Bear." She tried the word out. It seemed to fit. She reached out her hand again. "Can I hold your thumb?" "My hand is too small." He held out his hand. She wrapped her little fingers around his thumb and did not let go. "Where do you live, Ivy?" "The blue house with the flowers, Miss Nora." Declan's boots felt suddenly too heavy. He knew the blue house. He knew it better than he knew his own face in a mirror. "I'll walk you." They went together slow, her taking 2 steps to his one, him adjusting without thinking. The street lights came up. A dog barked somewhere. A pickup truck passed and the driver looked twice at the sight of them, the man in the Hells Angels vest and the tiny girl holding his thumb, and then looked away fast. "Mr. Biscuits goes everywhere with me," Ivy said. "Good, he's a good bear." His arm came off. "I can fix him. I've patched worse." "Do you know how to sew?" "Learned a long time ago, on the road." "Oh." She thought about that. "Was the road far?" "Sometimes." "Did you ever get lost?" "Many times." "Did somebody find you?" He looked down at her. She was not looking at him. She was looking at her shoes, concentrating on keeping up. "I think," he said slowly, "someone might be finding me right now." She did not know what that meant. She smiled anyway. "Bear, yeah. Are bikers mean?" The question came out of nowhere, and he knew where it came from. 5 years old, 3 foster homes, a pre-K teacher with warnings about strangers, a world that had tried in her very short life to teach her which shapes were dangerous and which were safe. "Some are," he said. He thought it was important to be honest with her. He had figured out, even in the short distance of a single sidewalk, that she could tell when people were lying. "Some aren't. Mostly we're just people who like engines and each other. Same as anybody else. Some good, some bad." "Which one are you?" "I try real hard to be the good kind." "Trying counts." "Does it?" "Miss Nora says so." "Well then, Miss Nora's right." She squeezed his thumb. They walked past the Henderson house. Mr. Henderson had been dead 19 years, but the name still belonged to the house because that was how small towns worked. Names stuck to houses the way paint stuck to siding. Declan remembered Mr. Henderson. He had handed out full-size candy bars at Halloween, which had been the high holy miracle of Declan's childhood, and he had once given an 8-year-old Declan a ride on his riding mower around the front yard, and Declan had not told that story to another living soul in 37 years. "This street used to have a Halloween thing," he said mostly to himself. Ivy looked up. A Halloween thing. All the houses, everybody gave out candy. The Hendersons gave out full-size bars. "What's a full-size bar?" He stopped walking for a second. He looked down at her. "Kid," he said. "Oh, kid." "What?" "Nothing. We're going to have a talk about candy later." "Okay." "A long one." "Okay." "With examples." "Okay, Bear." They turned onto Maple, then onto Pine Hollow proper, and with each step, Declan's chest grew tighter. The Henderson house, the spot where the Miller place had burned down when he was 10, the stop sign where he had crashed his first bike, the old oak tree, and then ahead past a line of porches that had not changed in 30 years, the blue Victorian with the wraparound porch and the crooked second step. His house, his childhood house, except it was not and had not been for almost 3 decades. Lights burned in every window. A wreath of autumn leaves hung on the door. The front yard was tidy with flower beds where none had existed in his memory, and a child's red wagon parked beside the steps. From inside came the muffled sound of children's voices and a pan clattering against a stove. Ivy tugged his thumb. "This is it. This is my house." Declan's throat closed. "Yeah," he managed. "I know." The front door opened before they reached the steps. A woman stood in the light. She was in her early 40s. Brown hair streaked with early gray, pulled back in a loose ponytail. She wore jeans and an apron dusted with flour. Her eyes went to Ivy, and relief washed over her face before it was replaced by something more cautious as she took in the man beside her. "Ivy Sutton, where on earth have you been?" "I went to the swings, Miss Nora. I'm sorry. I was about to call. Baby, your knee is bleeding." "Bear helped me," Ivy said, holding up her clasped hand. "He's my friend." Nora Pritchard's eyes traveled up slowly the way the children's had. Up the boots, up the jeans, up the vest, the patches, the beard. But unlike the children, she did not stop at fear. She kept going past the leather, past the tattoos to Declan's eyes, and there she held. Whatever she saw, it made her shoulders relax a quarter of an inch. "Thank you," she said. Some kids were bothering her at the old playground, older kids. Oakwood House kids, sounded like it. She closed her eyes briefly, opened them. "Come in, please. Let me clean her up. Let me pour you a cup of coffee. I owe you that." "I don't want to intrude." "You saved her. You're not intruding." Ivy still had not let go of his thumb. Declan climbed the first step. The second one creaked under his weight, the same off-key creak he had heard 10,000 times as a boy, and it nearly took his knees out. Inside the house was and was not his. The layout was the same. The staircase, the archway between living room and dining, the window where he had sat every afternoon for a year waiting for his mother's blue Chevy to come down the street. But the walls were painted a warm, buttery yellow now. Children's drawings hung everywhere, held up by magnets and thumbtacks. A bookshelf overflowed with paperback picture books. A basket of mismatched socks sat beside a sofa draped in a crocheted blanket. The dead house where he had grown up had become a living one. "In the kitchen," Nora said. "Ivy, let's get that knee." She led the way. Declan followed. And when he walked into the kitchen, he had to stop and rest his hand on the door frame for a moment because the refrigerator still had the same crack in the linoleum beside it, and that crack had always looked to him as a boy like the shape of the state of Florida. "You okay?" Nora asked, glancing up from where she was dabbing antiseptic on Ivy's knee. "Yeah." He cleared his throat. "The crack in the floor. It looks like Florida." Nora looked at the floor, looked back up at him, tilted her head. "Yes," she said slowly, "it does." Ivy winced as the antiseptic stung. It hurts. I know, baby, almost done. Nora reached into the first aid kit and pulled out a bandage decorated with cartoon foxes. She pressed it gently over the scrape. Brave girl, she said. Bear is brave too, Ivy said. He made the big kids leave. Nora looked up at Declan again. Her expression had shifted a little, curiosity now overlaying the gratitude. You look like you need to sit down, Mr. Morrow. Bear's fine. Bear, sit, please. The coffee's already on. He sat. The chair was wooden and simple, and his knees did not quite fit under the table the way they had when he was 10. Nora poured him a mug of black coffee, set it in front of him, and then sat across from him with her own. Ivy climbed into the chair beside Declan without asking, dragging Mr. Biscuits with her, and settled in as if she had always sat there. You're new to town? Nora asked. Been away, a long time. How long? 27 years. She did not press. Ivy, however, was 5 years old, and 5-year-olds do not know about not pressing. Did you used to live in Millbrook, Bear? Yes. Near here? Yes. How near? He looked at Nora. She looked back at him, her coffee halfway to her lips. Her hand paused. I grew up in this house, he said. Nora set her coffee down very slowly. Ivy's mouth opened. You lived in my house. It was my house once. Did you sleep in my room? I have the little one at the top of the stairs with the slanty ceiling. My bed has stars on the sheets. That was my room too. Oh. She thought about that for a long time, her small forehead folded in concentration. Then we're kind of like brother and sister, just different times. He did not know what to say to that. Nora had gathered herself. She took a sip of coffee, set the mug down. I bought this house 18 years ago, she said quietly. From an estate sale after it had been empty for 5. It needed a lot of work. I imagine. Foundations were solid. Good bones, the inspector said. I don't know what happened in it before me. Nothing that was its fault. A silence moved through the kitchen, not uncomfortable, just full. Upstairs, feet thundered. A voice called down. Miss Nora, is Ivy back? She's home rowing, dinner in 20. Is somebody down there? A friend. Set the table, please. Ivy slipped off her chair. I'll get Mr. Biscuits to his shelf, she pattered out. Nora watched her go. Then she turned back to Declan. I want to thank you properly. No need. There is a need. That little girl came to me 3 months ago carrying nothing but that bear and a list of 3 other homes that hadn't worked out. She trusts almost nobody. And yet when she came up the walk tonight, she was holding your hand like you'd always been holding it. That matters, Mr. Morrow. Whatever your road has been, that matters. He did not meet her eyes. He looked at the crack in the floor shaped like Florida. I just stopped some bullying, he said. Maybe. But a man who stops some bullying and walks a little girl home and sits down at a kitchen table and says, I grew up in this house. That's not just stopping some bullying. That's something else. He did not answer. He could not. Nora got up. Let me make you a plate. There's plenty. I should go. Ivy will be devastated if you leave before she shows you her room. He looked up at her. He had come back to Millbrook to bury a ghost. He had not come back to sit at a kitchen table in the house of that ghost and eat chili made by a kind woman with flour on her apron. 1 bowl, he said. 1 bowl. She smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a woman who carried more than her share, but it reached her eyes, and for a second, Declan understood why this house had become a refuge. Some houses learn from their ghosts. Some people do too. Ivy came back, stepped up into her chair, and laid her hand on Declan's arm, as if to make sure he was still solid. Bear is staying for dinner, she announced to the empty doorway in the direction of the unseen children upstairs. Just 1 bowl, Nora said, ladling chili. Just 1, Declan said. 2 hours later, he had eaten 3. He had met them all by then, introduced in a hurried round by Nora before grace was said. Rowan, 10 years old and tall for his age, a quiet boy with a buzz cut and a sharp mind. Finn, 9, missing 2 front teeth, and most of his social filter, who had asked Declan within 30 seconds if he was the kind of biker who has killed a guy. Sage, 8 years old, solemn and watchful, who had barely looked up from her plate, but had listened to every word. Juniper, 6, called June, who kept up a running commentary about her drawing of a cat riding a whale, and Ivy, 5, who had moved her chair so it touched his. 6 children, 6 foster kids in a house made for a family of 4, and Nora Pritchard feeding them all. After dinner, Ivy showed him her room. It was the room he had slept in until the week his mother had left. The wallpaper was different. The bed faced a different wall, but the slanted ceiling was the same, and the small round window at its peak through which a 9-year-old Declan had once watched the headlights of cars coming up Pine Hollow, hoping each one was her. Ivy bounced on the bed. "See stars. Miss Nora let me pick." "Nice stars. Are you going to come back?" The question caught him. "Ivy," he said, "you don't have to, I'm just asking." "Kid, I know the big kids might come back." She climbed down and stood in front of him, clutching Mr. Biscuits, whose loose arm was now tucked under the other one like a secret. "I know you can't stay, but if they do, could you maybe come back one time just to scare them?" He went down on one knee again. It was becoming a thing. "I'll come back," he said. "More than once, okay?" "Okay, that's a promise. And where I come from, you don't break promises, even if you're scared, even if it gets hard. Understand?" "Yes." "Good." She reached out and placed her small palm flat on his vest right over the Hells Angels patch, as if sealing something. "You're a good bear," she said. Downstairs, Nora was waiting on the porch with his helmet. The air had gone cold. "She's going to hold you to that, you know," Nora said. "I know." "The Oakwood House kids," she said softer. "The ones who bothered her. They're gonna come back. They've bothered her before. They've bothered Sage, too. We've called. Nothing gets done. The woman at Oakwood, her name is Evelyn Delacroix." Nora stopped mid-sentence. "How did you know that?" "It's on a plaque outside the county office. I passed it riding in. She's still here. She's been here 12 years. And every year there are fewer kids at our house and more at hers. And I cannot figure out why, because she runs that place like a warehouse, and we have a waiting list of families who want to take ours." Declan stared down the street. "I'll come back tomorrow." "You don't have to. I made Ivy a promise." He put the helmet on. He started the Harley. The rumble-filled Pine Hollow shook the leaves on the maple tree. He pulled away from the curb. He made it exactly 4 blocks before he stopped under a street light, killed the engine, and sat there in the cold with both hands on his knees. For the first time in 27 years, Declan Morrow put his forehead against his own fist and cried. He did not make a sound. He did not need to. The town was quiet, and the sky was full of stars, and the little light at the top of the house he had once fled was still burning. He slept that night in a motel off the interstate on sheets that smelled like bleach, with his boots on the floor beside the bed and his phone unplugged on the nightstand. He did not dream. When he woke at 5 in the morning, he knew before his eyes opened where he was going. He was going back. He pulled up across from the blue Victorian just before sunrise. A thin fog lay over Pine Hollow. He sat on his bike helmet in his lap, watching the house come awake. A light in the kitchen, coffee probably, another light in an upstairs bedroom, somebody early to rise. The front door creaked. A small figure in pajamas and a too-big cardigan stepped out onto the porch. Her hair was a mess. She was carrying Mr. Biscuits. She sat down on the top step and set the bear in her lap, and she stared down Pine Hollow, waiting. Ivy Sutton had not doubted for a second that he would come. He killed the urge to cry again. He got off the bike. Her head came up the moment she heard his boots on the sidewalk, and the smile that split her face made something in him crack, not in a bad way, the way an old lock cracks when the right key turns. "Bear. Morning, kid." "I told Miss Nora you'd come. I told her." "I said I would." "I know." He climbed the porch steps. She scooted over to make room for him beside her on the top step. He sat. The wood took his weight like an old friend who had been waiting to be asked. "You been up long?" "A little bit." "Cold?" "A little bit." He took off his leather jacket and draped it around her. It swallowed her whole. She wiggled inside it, grinning. "Now I'm a biker. Now you're warm." "Bear." "Yeah. I dreamed about the bad kids, but then you were there." "Good. Are you going to stay for breakfast? Miss Nora makes waffles on Tuesdays." "It's Wednesday." "Oh, pancakes on Wednesdays." The screen door opened behind them. Nora stood in her robe, coffee in hand. She did not look surprised. She looked like a woman who had learned years ago to recognize the small miracles before they finished happening. "Ivy was right," she said quietly. "Told you," Ivy said from inside the leather jacket. "Get in here, Bear. Breakfast's almost ready." He stood. His knees did not pop this time. Ivy slipped her small hand into his, and the two of them followed Nora inside, Ivy still draped in a Hell's Angels jacket that weighed more than she did. The kitchen was already filling with the smell of coffee and syrup. The other children were drifting down sleepy, rubbing their eyes until one by one they stopped in the kitchen doorway and stared at the huge man in the leather vest sitting at their breakfast table with a cartoon fox bandage stuck to the thumbnail of his right hand because Ivy had put it there to keep his hand company after last night. Rowan was first. Buzz cut wide eyes. He did not say anything. He took his seat without a word. Finn came next. He opened his mouth closed. It sat down. Sage came in behind Finn, holding June's hand. She saw Declan. Her grip on June's hand tightened. June waved. Sage did not. Nora flipped a pancake. "This is Bear," she said as if it were a normal Wednesday. "He's going to be around sometimes. Ivy honey napkins. Finn syrup's over there. Rowan, would you please pour juice?" They did as they were told because children always do, even when the world has rearranged itself overnight. The screen door slammed. Footsteps up the porch. A knock. Declan's head came up. Nora went to the door. A murmur of voices. Then 3 kids came through the kitchen doorway, sleep-tousled and hungry in clothes that did not quite fit. Beckett Rollins, the tall boy from the playground, and the girl with the ponytail. They froze when they saw Declan. Nora did not. Come in, sit down," she said. "You know the rule. Kids from Oakwood can eat here any morning they need a real breakfast. I've told Miss Delacroix 100 times. Sit." Beckett's eyes were locked on Declan. Declan's were locked on Beckett. Ivy, sitting at his elbow, noticed. She looked from one to the other, and then, because she was 5, and forgiveness came easier to her than it would ever come to any of them again, she picked up a plate and walked around the table. "Here," she said to Beckett. She held out the plate. "You can have first pancake." Beckett stared at her. His chin did something complicated. "Why?" he said. His voice was hoarse. "Because Ivy said Bear says mean people are sometimes scared. I get scared too." Beckett took the plate. His hands shook just a little. He sat down at the foot of the table as far from Declan as he could get, and he did not look at anyone for the whole meal. But he ate. He ate 2 pancakes, and when he got up to leave, he put his plate in the sink without being asked. Declan watched him go. Nora refilled Declan's coffee. "They come over," Declan said quietly. "When they can sneak out," Nora murmured back. "Oakwood's breakfast is cornflakes and water. I'm not supposed to feed them. If Delacroix finds out, she'll shut me down." "How many times have they come?" "Maybe a dozen over the last year. Sometimes just 1 or 2. Sometimes all 5. They don't stay long. They eat fast. They leave before Delacroix does her morning walk-through over there. If she counts heads and comes up short, there's punishment. So they are very, very careful. They have a system. The tall one, his name's Micah. He watches the window. The ponytail girl, that's Lola, she runs point. Beckett keeps the little ones calm. They have a system. They have a system. Declan thought about that. 5 children under 13 who had organized their own hunger relief, who had built a smuggling route for pancakes. Nora. Yeah. How long has this been going on? Since I moved in. Different kids, always the same hallway. They figure out real fast once they're at Oakwood which house on this street leaves the porch light on at breakfast. He thought about that too. Your porch light. Every morning since 2007. He looked at her over the rim of his coffee. She was refilling Finn's orange juice without looking at it. She had the manner of a woman who did 1,000 small, unnoticed things in a single morning and expected nothing for any of them. Nora Pritchard, he said. Don't start. I'm just saying. Bear, if you say one kind thing about me before I have had a second cup of coffee, I will cry, and I do not have time to cry this morning. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Declan looked at the kitchen, at the drawings on the walls, at the crack in the floor shaped like Florida, at the children, his and not his, eating at the table where he had once eaten alone. He thought about his mother. He thought about himself at 8 waiting. He thought about Beckett, who had lived in a house where breakfast was cornflakes and water, and who had learned because cruelty was a kind of armor to throw a bear at a little girl. Something tightened in his jaw. Miss Pritchard, he said. Nora, please. Nora, I need to ask you some questions about Evelyn Delacroix. Nora looked at him, at the set of his shoulders, at the quiet in his face that had replaced the tiredness. She pulled out the chair across from him. She sat down. Ask, she said. And outside, the morning sun was climbing Pine Hollow Street, and somewhere in a county office 3 miles away, a woman in a navy suit was unlocking her desk and pulling out a folder labeled Oakwood Placements. And somewhere in a cemetery on the edge of town, a headstone bearing the name of a woman Declan Morrow had believed dead for 37 years was wrong, and he did not know it yet. And Ivy Sutton was leaning against his arm, eating pancakes, as if she had always been there, as if she always would be. By the end of the week, Declan Morrow had learned the rhythm of the Blue House the way a man learns the hum of his own motorcycle. Mornings began at 6:30 with the smell of coffee and the thump of Rowan's feet on the stairs. Breakfast was a controlled riot. School buses came at 7:50. Sage and June were walked to the elementary school by Nora, who made the trip on foot because the station wagon had a cracked manifold and she could not afford to fix it. By 9, the house settled into a tired hush, broken only by Ivy, who was too young for kindergarten and stayed home with Nora, and by Declan, who had taken to showing up at 8, with a toolbox from his saddlebag and a list of things that needed fixing. The second step. The loose hinge on the back door. The dripping faucet upstairs. The window in the boys' room that would not close properly in the cold. The ceiling fan in the hallway that had not worked since a thunderstorm 3 summers ago. The banister on the staircase that wobbled when anyone over 80 pounds leaned on it. He fixed them without asking permission. He fixed them because his hands needed something to do, and because each repair felt like a small apology to the house itself for what had happened in it, and to the boy who had once watched all of these things break without ever learning how to make them whole again. Ivy followed him from room to room. She handed him screws. She organized his nails by size. She narrated his work to Mr. Biscuits, whose arm Declan had sewn back on the second night with thick waxed thread from his patch kit. He's fixing the sink, Ivy told the bear on Tuesday. The sink was leaking. Now it's not. Bear is very good at sinks. Bear is very good at sinks, Declan agreed. Bear is also good at sewing. He fixed you. Bear is a bear of many talents, Bear is. By Wednesday evening, Nora caught Declan on the porch as he was leaving for the motel. I've got the den, she said. It's tiny, but there's a pull-out couch and a window. If you keep coming every morning at 8, it makes more sense to just stay. He looked at her. No charge, she said. I'd be robbing you. You fixed the roof this afternoon. The roof needed fixing. It had needed fixing for 3 years. I did not say it did not need fixing. I said you fixed it. There's a difference. He moved in on Thursday. One duffel bag, his patch kit, his helmet on top of the nightstand. When he came downstairs on Friday morning, Ivy was waiting at the bottom of the steps with a drawing she had made of him. In the drawing, he was approximately the size of a building, and his vest had so many patches it looked like a quilt, and standing next to him was a small person labeled Ivy in purple crayon holding his hand. He hung it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Declan sat on the back step with a mug in his hands and watched the yard. The grass was overgrown. There was an old rusted swing set leaning against the far fence, a birdhouse on a pole that had broken in half, a garden plot that had not been turned in years. He catalogued them slowly, the way a mechanic catalogues an engine before he rebuilds it. All of them fixable. All of them small, all of them pieces of a place a kid could grow up in if someone cared enough to tend them. He thought about how many nights he had sat on this same back step as a child, wondering where his mother was. He thought about how the yard had looked the same, then just slightly less rusted. He thought about how the sky had the same stars, indifferent and beautiful, looking down on a town that could not remember his name. He finished his coffee and went inside. Ivy's light was still on. He peeked in. She was asleep with Mr. Biscuits on her chest and a book open next to her pillow. He walked in, set the book on the nightstand, drew the covers up over her. She did not wake, but her small hand fluttered out and touched his and held on for a second in her sleep and then let go. He stood in the doorway for a long time before he went back downstairs. He took Ivy back to the playground on Saturday. They went slowly, her hand in his. At the rusty gate, she stopped, her fingers tightening. "We don't have to go in," he said. "Miss Nora says we have to face fears. We can face them from the bench." "What about the swing?" "You can work your way up to the swing, one step at a time." She nodded, squared her tiny shoulders, and walked with him to the weathered wooden bench at the edge of the playground. They sat. She scanned the gravel like a soldier checking a minefield. Nothing happened. The chains on the swings creaked in the wind. A sparrow landed on the slide and flew off again. "This is okay," she said. "Told you. Tomorrow can we try the bench by the sandbox?" "Whatever you want, kid." A shuffle of footsteps made them turn. Beckett Rollins stood at the gate. Behind him, the tall boy, the ponytail girl, and two younger ones he did not recognize from Nora's house, Oakwood kids. Ivy pressed against Declan's side. Declan raised a hand. Slow, open, not a wave exactly, a signal. "We're not doing anything," Beckett said. "I didn't say you were." "We saw you here. Big playground, plenty of room." Beckett's friends were already edging back toward the gate, but Beckett did not move. His eyes flicked from Declan to Ivy to the empty swings. A boy deciding. "Actually," Declan said, keeping his voice easy, "I could use some help. Ivy wants to try the swings tomorrow, and I've been told I push too hard. Any of you know the right way to push a 5-year-old? The tall boy glanced at Beckett. Beckett did not look at him. "I can push," Beckett said. "Yeah." "Slow, got it. And you have to let her kick her own legs. Otherwise it's not flying. It's just hanging." "Kid," Declan said, "you just taught me something." Beckett looked down at his sneakers. Something else came out of the boy's mouth, quieter than before. "She used to like that song, the one Ivy hums." Ivy looked up. "The one you hum," Beckett said, meeting her eyes for the first time. "The little song. My real mom sang it." "Mine too, to my sister." "Where's your sister?" Beckett's throat worked. "She died," he said. 3 years ago. She was 3. Nobody was watching her. At the house we were at." The tall boy looked at the ground. The ponytail girl looked at the sky. The two younger ones looked at Beckett as if they had never heard him say this out loud before, which they probably hadn't. Declan said nothing. He had learned a long time ago that silence was a kind of room. You open the door and you let people walk in. I'm sorry, Ivy said. Beckett shrugged a small, hard shrug. It's not your fault. No, but I'm sorry anyway. He looked at her. Really looked. 5 years old, sitting on a bench in a too-big cardigan arm around a teddy bear he had torn 2 weeks ago. Something in his face softened in a way that hurt to watch. Do you want me to push you on the swing? He said. Ivy looked up at Declan. Go on, Declan said. Ivy slid off the bench. She walked toward Beckett as if she were approaching a deer in a field. She stopped in front of him. Slow, though. I promise. She took his hand. He led her to the swings. The other Oakwood kids stood frozen a moment, then drifted over. The tall boy picked up a stray bottle cap. The ponytail girl sat on the slide ladder. One of the younger ones climbed onto the swing next to Ivy's. Beckett set his hands on Ivy's back and pushed gently the way you push something breakable. Ivy kicked her own legs. The swing went back, went forward, went back. Kick, Ivy, the ponytail girl called softly, helpful now. Kick and lean. Ivy kicked. For a moment she was flying. Declan sat on the bench with his hands loose between his knees and watched. And he thought for the first time in his adult life that maybe the reason he had been so angry for so long was that there had never been anyone to teach him how to kick and lean, how to let a hand push him, how to fly for the 2 seconds before gravity pulled him back. He blinked hard at the sky. When the sun started to slant toward the west, he called them all in. He had a thermos of cocoa in his saddlebag, 2 paper cups, and enough cookies Nora had sent to go around twice. He passed them out. The Oakwood kids accepted with a shyness that was almost formal. Beckett took 1 cookie and broke it in half and gave half to Ivy without looking at her. Ivy ate her half very solemnly like it was a communion wafer. Nobody said thank you out loud. It was there in the cookies. That night, Nora sat with him on the porch after the kids were in bed. She had a mug of tea. He had a mug of decaf because she had asked him gently to try to sleep. The October air smelled like smoke. I've been looking into Delacroix, Nora said. Me too. Something's wrong. I know. I don't have proof. Let's get some. She pulled a folder out from under her chair. Inside were photocopies, placement records going back 4 years. She had marked up the margins with her own notes. Watch the pattern, she said. Kids come to my house, stay 6 months, 8 months, just long enough for the state to start seeing improvement. Then they're moved, always to the same private agency, Bright Path Solutions, based in Columbus, contracts with the county for specialized behavioral placement. Their fees are 4 times what a county home gets. And every time a kid moves, Delacroix gets copied on the paperwork. Kickbacks. I can't prove it. But Bright Path has been operating in this county for 12 years, which is exactly how long Delacroix has been a senior caseworker. Who would be able to prove it? I don't know any county people who'd cross her. Lawyers. Nora hesitated. There's a new one at Legal Aid. Harriet Ashford, kid right out of Ohio State. Idealist. She's taken on one of my cases before and she didn't flinch when Delacroix pushed back. But she's 27. She needs someone to tell her it's okay to be a boat rocker. I'll talk to her. She won't trust you. I'll bring Ivy. Nora laughed without humor. Bear, you can't use a child as a prop. I'm not. I'm just going to tell her plain why we're sitting at her desk and she can decide. All right. They drank in silence for a while. The wind moved the porch swing. Somewhere up the street, a television murmured through an open window. Bear, Nora said, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Why'd you stop? Stop what? At the playground. That first night. You were passing through. You told me. You had been riding for hours. Why'd you stop? He turned the mug in his hands. I don't know. Try. I've been riding this road since I was 18. Never stopped here. Never once. That night I didn't plan to. He gestured, looking for it. Something told me to slow down. Then something told me to park. Then I heard her scream. Do you believe in signs? I didn't. Do you now? He did not answer. He looked up at the sky. A plane was going over, a red light blinking. My mother left me in this house, he said, when I was 8. Walked out on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at school. Never came back. I was told she'd abandoned us. My father took it hard. Drank himself into a box 6 months later. State took me. 3 foster homes by the time I was 12. Ran away at 16. Joined the club when I was 19. Nora did not interrupt. I've spent 37 years, he said, hating her or pretending I didn't. And now you're sitting on her porch. Yeah. What do you think stopped you? He rubbed his eyes. I don't know. Maybe her, wherever she is. What if she's still alive, Bear? He looked at her. I've been in this house for 18 years, Nora said carefully. When I bought it, the real estate agent told me the woman who had lived here before, a woman named Maggie Morrow, had been committed. Not dead. Committed. She was young when she went in. She had what my father used to call a nervous breakdown, though we'd call it something different now. Declan's mug was halfway to his lips. It stopped there. Committed where? County records aren't my field, but Millbrook only has one place that long-term patients get sent. Twin Oaks Psychiatric Care, out on Route 14. He set the mug down very carefully on the porch rail. That's 20 minutes from here. Yes, she'd be. 67 maybe, if she's still living. He did not breathe for a long moment. Why are you telling me this? Because you've been carrying a dead woman for 37 years, Nora said. And I think maybe the universe sent you back here to find out she isn't. He went to Twin Oaks the next morning. He did not tell Ivy. The drive was 2-lane blacktop between frost-dusted fields past silos and dollar stores and a Wendy's. Twin Oaks was a brick building with a wheelchair ramp and a garden out front. Inside it smelled like linoleum and lilac air freshener and medication. He signed in at the desk. He stared at the line that said, "Relationship to patient." He wrote, "Son." The nurse who came out was kind. She took him down a hallway. "She's having a good day," the nurse said. "She has some good ones. She won't remember you, I should warn you. She has not had a family visitor in 28 years. The paperwork had her listed as having no next of kin." Of course, he thought, of course. They came to a door. The nurse knocked softly. "Miss Maggie, you have a visitor." The door opened on a small, bright room with a window full of morning light. In a rocking chair by the window sat a woman in a pale blue cardigan. Her hair was completely white, cut short and neat. Her hands were folded in her lap. She was humming. He stopped breathing. The tune. The little round tune. Pink and gold. It was the song Ivy hummed. "Mom," he said. She looked up. Her eyes were the same gray-green they had always been. The color of the underside of a storm. The color of Ivy's eyes, which was nonsense because Ivy was not her granddaughter, but the color of them anyway. She smiled at him. It was a polite smile, a stranger's smile. "Hello, young man, are you the new boy?" "Yes, ma'am." "They bring me new ones sometimes. I'm sorry, what's your name?" "Declan." "Declan." She tried the word. "That's a lovely name." "Thank you. My son's name was Declan." "Did I tell you that already? I tell people sometimes. He would be." She frowned, working at it. "He would be grown up now. I can't think how old exactly. Sometimes the numbers slip. It's okay. Do you know my son? He had very dark hair, and he liked motorcycles. Even when he was little, he drew them, all the time." Declan's eyes were wet. He did not try to hide it. "I think I might know him, ma'am." "Oh, how wonderful. Will you tell him I'm sorry?" "Sorry for what?" She looked out the window. "I had to go away," she said. "I don't always remember why. I remember I was not well. I remember I was afraid for him. I remember I tried to leave a note. I do not remember what it said. Will you tell him that I tried?" "I'll tell him. And tell him I loved him." "Yes, ma'am." She looked at him a long moment. Her forehead creased a little, and for a second her stranger's smile slipped, and something moved behind her eyes that he could not name. "You look like my Declan," she said softly. "Do I?" around the eyes. She reached out and took his hand. Her hand was small and light dry as paper. She began to hum the song again. He hummed it with her. The nurse stepped out quietly and closed the door behind her and left them there. The white-haired woman and the big man in the leather vest, humming a little round tune that his newest friend, 5 years old and 2 towns away, was probably humming at that exact same moment over a plate of lunch in a blue Victorian kitchen. He stayed an hour. She drifted in and out. She told him a story about a dog she had owned when she was a girl. She asked him 3 times if he had heard from her son. She fell asleep eventually in the rocking chair, and he pulled the blanket up around her shoulders, and he kissed her dry forehead very gently, the way you kiss something sacred, and he did not know if that was allowed, and he did not care. Before she fell asleep, she had reached into the pocket of her cardigan and taken out a small thing and put it into his palm. It was a folded piece of paper, yellowed, creased to softness. He had not opened it while she was awake. He opened it now. It was a child's drawing. A motorcycle, done in blue ballpoint pen on notebook paper. In the corner, in the round letters of a 7-year-old, the name Declan. She had kept it for 37 years, in the pocket of whatever cardigan the nurses put on her that morning. He sat beside her chair on the floor of that small, bright room, and he pressed the drawing to his forehead. And he did not cry, because he had already cried once in the hallway and once in the parking lot, and there was no more left right at that moment, and he was beginning to understand that grief was not a thing that came in a single wave. It came in sets. It came over years, and he would have a lifetime now to let it come to him here in this chair beside this woman humming a little round song. He stayed until the nurse came to tell him kindly that Miss Maggie usually napped until 3. On the way out, he stopped at the front desk. "I'd like to be listed as her son," he said. "Next of kin. I'd like to come every week. I'd like to pay whatever needs paying that isn't already covered." The nurse who had been watching through the window smiled. "Mr. Morrow, we have a form." He filled it out. He drove back to Millbrook with the sun in his eyes and his jaw aching from how hard he had been holding it. When he pulled up in front of the blue house, Ivy was in the front yard with June raking leaves. She saw his bike, dropped the rake, and ran. She skidded to a stop in front of him. "Bear, where'd you go?" "Had to see somebody, kid." "Who?" He sank down onto the step. "Somebody I thought was lost," he said. "She wasn't." "Oh, is she okay?" "She's okay." Ivy pressed Mr. Biscuits against his chest and climbed into his lap. She hummed the little song softly all by herself into the collar of his vest. He rested his chin on the top of her head and closed his eyes. That afternoon, Ms. Evelyn Delacroix came up the front walk of the Blue House. She was in her early 50s, navy suit, hair pulled back so tight it pulled the corners of her eyes. She carried a leather portfolio under her arm. She did not ring the bell. She knocked 3 times sharp. Nora opened the door. "Miss Pritchard, good afternoon. May I come in?" "Do you have an appointment?" "I never need one." "You need one today." Delacroix smiled thin. "I'd hate to have to note in the file that you were uncooperative." Nora let her in. She sat at the dining table. She took papers out of her portfolio. She laid them flat. "I'm here to inform you," she said, "that the department has made final determinations regarding 4 of your placements. Beckett Rollins will be transferred to Bright Path Solutions Columbus office Friday. Rowan Bell will go to a long-term placement outside Cincinnati. Finn Harper will go back into Oakwood. Sage Whitfield will go to a Bright Path satellite in Toledo. Effective Friday at 4 p.m. I need you to have their belongings packed by 2. Nora's face drained of color. "That's 3 days." "That's correct. These children are in school. They've settled." "Settled is a subjective term. You've split them into 4 different cities. They are not siblings. They're a family. They are not legally a family. Ms. Delacroix." Nora's voice had gone very quiet and very cold. You do this every year. Every single year. You take the ones who've just started to trust me, and you send them to Bright Path. Every time. Every single time. Delacroix did not blink. Specialized placement decisions are made according to the needs of the child, Miss Pritchard. I understand this is emotional for you. Please try to remember that this is not about you. It is not about me. Then we agree. Declan was standing in the kitchen doorway. He had not moved. Delacroix had not seen him. She saw him now. She took him in. The vest, the beard, the tattoos on the hands resting at his sides. The way he did not shift his weight, did not flinch, did not fill the silence. Her mouth tightened. And you are friend of the family. Friend of the family. I see. And you are listed on the placement records. How? I'm not listed. I'm visiting. How convenient. Miss Pritchard, I'll need you to review state regulations regarding unvetted adults in placement homes. You ran a background check on him the moment you saw him, Declan said. Delacroix paused. Excuse me. You will if you haven't already. So let me save you the time. Declan Morrow, 45. Hell's Angels. Millbrook chapter. 2 convictions, both misdemeanors, both over 20 years old. Clean since I was 24. You will also find if you dig that I grew up in this house. Foster system. You'd probably have been my caseworker if you were here then. Her hand had gone to her pen. She was gripping it. Mr. Morrow, the placement decisions have been made. By you. By the department. Funny, Bright Path Solutions keeps coming up in your files. She went very still. Mr. Morrow, please step back. I'm standing in a kitchen. Miss Pritchard, I will note in the file that you had a man with gang affiliations in the home during my visit, and I will recommend supervisory review of all current placements, including the Sutton child. Ivy. Declan's stomach dropped. Nora caught his eye across the room. Her face said, "Don't." He did not. He put his hands flat on the counter and breathed out. Thank you for the update, Ms. Delacroix, he said, each word polished and placed like a stone. We'll see you at the hearing. What hearing? The one you don't know about yet. He smiled. Just the edge of one. Delacroix stood. She gathered her papers slowly because she would not give them the satisfaction of rushing. At the door, she turned back. Have their things packed by Friday at 2. She left. Ivy, who had been standing on the top step of the staircase the whole time clutching Mr. Biscuits, came down slowly. Bear, she said. Yeah, kid. Is Beckett going away? He knelt. He looked into her face. Not if I can help it. What's a hearing? It's when a judge decides what's right. Will a judge say Beckett can stay? I'm going to ask one. When? Soon. Bear. Yeah. Don't let them take him. He put his hand on the back of her small head. I won't, he said. I will not let them take any of you, I promise. Her eyes filled. She did not cry. She just nodded the way a small soldier nods. That night he called Harriet Ashford. She picked up on the 4th ring. She sounded tired and skeptical and 27. Legal aid. My name is Declan Morrow. Mr. Morrow, our office closes at 6. It's 5:50. It's 5:56. What's your issue? Evelyn Delacroix, Oakwood House, Bright Path Solutions. The silence on the other end lasted exactly long enough for her to sit up straighter in her chair. Mr. Morrow, she said, can you be at our office tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning? Yes. Bring everything you have. He brought Ivy. Ms. Ashford opened the door of the legal aid office and saw a man the size of a refrigerator and a little girl in a denim dress clutching a teddy bear with a visibly re-sewn arm, and she blinked exactly once. Come in, she said. I brought coffee, Declan said, holding up a tray. I wasn't sure what you drink, so I got you 3. Ms. Ashford accepted the tray. Mr. Morrow, you are more prepared than most lawyers. I want you to know I'm serious, and she's serious. Ivy lifted Mr. Biscuits. Mr. Biscuits is the most serious, Ivy said. Ashford nodded to the bear. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Biscuits. Pleasure, Ivy said on his behalf. They went into a tiny conference room. Declan spread Nora's file on the table. He walked Ashford through the pattern, the placements, the timing, the Bright Path invoices Nora had begged copies of from a clerk she knew in county records. Ashford put her coffee down halfway through. By the end, her hands were very still in her lap, and her eyes were bright. "I've been trying to find a pattern," she said. "For 2 years. This." She gestured at the file. "This is what I've been trying to find. We have 3 days." "I know." 4 kids." "I know." "One of them is my friend," Ivy said from her chair. "His name is Beckett. He used to be mean. He's not mean anymore. He pushed me on the swing slow." Ashford looked at Ivy for a long time. Then she looked at Declan. "Mr. Morrow," she said, "I'm going to file an emergency motion this afternoon. Will a judge hear it this fast?" Judge Althea Calloway. She is 72 years old. She has been on the family bench for 31 years. And if I hand her a file that shows Evelyn Delacroix has been funneling children to a private agency for kickbacks, she will clear her schedule. What do you need from me? Statements. From Miss Pritchard. From you. From any Hell's Angels members willing to sign affidavits that you are of sound character and stable means. I am going to ask for an emergency placement hold until a full evidentiary hearing can be scheduled. Can your club provide character statements? 40 of them. 40. I can get 40. She stared at him. "Mr. Morrow," she said, "why are you doing this?" He looked at Ivy. Ivy was swinging her legs under her chair and humming the little round tune Pink and Gold. "Because nobody did it for me," he said. That afternoon, Declan Morrow rode out to the Rusty Nail, and when he walked through the door, 12 men turned to look, and Grizzly, the chapter president, saw the look on his face and set his coffee down. "Brothers," Grizzly said, "Bear has the floor." Declan stepped to the middle of the room. "I found something," he said. "I wasn't looking for it. I found a kid, 5 years old, getting beat on by other kids. And the other kids are also kids in the system. And the system is rotten. And there's a woman taking kickbacks to split kids up, sending them across the state so she can collect. And I grew up in that house." Nobody spoke. "I need help," he said. "The house needs repairs before the evidentiary hearing. The state's going to inspect it and use anything they find to shut Nora Pritchard down. I need 40 affidavits of character. I need hands. I need." Bear, Grizzly said. "Yeah, shut up and sit down." He sat. Grizzly stood, 6'4" beard down to his collarbone, the ugliest and kindest face Declan had ever loved. "Boys," Grizzly said, "we ride at 7 tomorrow morning. Diesel, you've got your cousin's lumber truck. Sparky, electrical. Hammer, plumbing. Everybody else, muscle. Rook, you write the affidavits tonight. 1 per man signed. Anybody's got family in this town who can cook, bring them. Any questions?" No one had questions. Bear, Grizzly said. "Yeah. Who's the kid?" "Her name is Ivy Sutton." "What's she like?" He did not know how to answer that. He thought about it a long time. "She holds my thumb," he said, "because her hand is too small for the rest." Grizzly looked at him across the room. "Bear," he said, "welcome home." At 7 in the morning, Pine Hollow Street heard the rumble of 40 motorcycles coming up it in a long, slow line. Curtains moved in every house. An old man in a bathrobe stepped out onto his porch and held his coffee cup in midair. A kid on a bicycle stopped and nearly fell over. The Hell's Angels of Millbrook, Ohio, 40 strong, rolled past the stop sign where a 15-year-old Declan had once crashed his first bike past the Henderson house, past the vacant lot where the Miller place had burned, and pulled in a long staggered line along the curb in front of the Blue Victorian. Nora opened the door. Grizzly stepped off his bike and walked up the path. He took off his cap. "Ma'am," he said. "Oh, my word," Nora said. "We heard your house needed some work." "Oh, my word." "Permission to come on the property." She stepped back and pressed her hand to her mouth. "Permission granted," she said. Diesel's cousin pulled up in a lumber truck. Sparky slid a ladder off the roof of Hammer's pickup. The front yard filled with plywood shingles, electrical conduit, paint cans. By 7:20, the porch was swarming with men in leather and flannel. By 7:40, the whine of circular saws had replaced the rumble of engines. Ivy came downstairs in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, and stopped at the bottom of the stairs. She looked out the front door. At 40 bikers, building her a house. Bear, she breathed. Declan was on the porch holding a level against a new railing board. Morning, kid? Bear, who are all those? Those are my brothers. Are they all your family? He set the level down. Yeah, kid, they are. She walked out onto the porch in her socks. Grizzly, 6'4", saw her coming and went down on one knee before she got to him so she would not have to crane her neck. Ma'am, Grizzly said. Hello, Ivy said. I am Grizzly. I am a friend of Bear's. Your beard is very big. Yes, ma'am, it is. Can I touch it? Grizzly considered this. Just this once, he said. Ivy touched the beard. It was apparently satisfactory. She nodded gravely. Mr. Biscuits wants to meet you too, she said. Mr. Biscuits was formally introduced to Grizzly, to Axel, to Torch, to Diesel, to Sparky, to Hammer, and to Rook. Each man shook the bear's paw. Rook, who had a Ph.D. in literature from a state school and had chosen the club anyway, said it was an honor. Ivy agreed that it was. By noon, the porch no longer sagged. By 2, the second step did not creak. By 4, the wiring in the kitchen had been redone, and you could run the microwave and the toaster at the same time without tripping a breaker. By 6, the siding had a fresh coat of paint on the south side, which had been peeling for years. Somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, Axel, who was the quietest of the angels and had been a Finnish carpenter before he had been anything else, disappeared into the back of the house with a level and a pack of cedar shims. 2 hours later he emerged and nodded at Declan and said, Second step. Fixed. Permanent. Declan stared at him. Axel, that step has been crooked since I was 6. Yeah, noticed. It was always going to be crooked. Well, ain't now. Axel walked past him and went back to work. Declan stood on the top of the porch and looked down at his childhood's crooked second step, which was not crooked anymore, and he put his hand on the railing and he breathed in and out for a long time before he trusted himself to move. Sparky, who had started rewiring the kitchen at 9, took a break at noon to teach Rowan how to strip a wire. Rowan, who had the careful hands of a chess player, did it perfectly on the first try. Sparky, who had raised 3 boys of his own, now grown and gone, clapped Rowan on the shoulder with a hand the size of a dinner plate, and Rowan did not flinch, and something passed between them that was not said because it did not need to be. Hammer, who had earned the name from the way he set nails, but could also install a toilet blindfolded, took June aside and showed her how to hold a hammer by the middle of the handle and swing from the elbow. June hit her own thumb on the 3rd swing and started to cry. Hammer, 6'3", gave her a piece of bubble gum from his pocket and said, Every carpenter hits the thumb the first time. You're a carpenter now. Welcome. June stopped crying and tried again. She did not hit her thumb. She nailed a piece of scrap wood to a piece of scrap wood and held it up to show Nora with grave pride, and Nora put it on the refrigerator with a magnet next to Ivy's drawing of Bear, where it remained for 3 years. Neighbors came out. An elderly couple from 2 houses down brought sandwiches. A young mother with a teenager in tow brought a tray of brownies. The teenager, whose name turned out to be Caleb, stayed to sand a railing. The old man, who had stared from his porch that morning, walked over with a box of long finishing nails he had bought in 1997 and never used. Figured somebody might need these eventually, he said. Grizzly shook his hand. We do, he said, much obliged. The old man's name was Elliot Whitman. He was 78. He had been a machinist in a factory that closed in 1988 and had lived alone on Pine Hollow since his wife died 11 years ago. He stayed for 3 hours and held board steady for Torch and told a story about his wife that made Torch, a 6-foot man with a skull tattoo on his throat, have to turn away briefly and pretend to blow his nose. The Oakwood kids came. Beckett led them up the walk at noon, and his eyes were wary, but his chin was up. He walked straight to Declan, not the other bikers. "What can I do? Can you hold a board steady?" "Yeah, come on." He put Beckett to work. The other Oakwood kids took their cue from him and spread out picking up jobs. The ponytail girl swept the driveway. The tall boy held paint cans. The 2 younger ones fetched water and cans of soda from the cooler Diesel had brought. Nobody said a word about what any of them had been 3 weeks ago. Nobody had to. At one point in the afternoon, Declan looked up from tightening a porch bolt and saw Beckett handing Ivy a fresh paintbrush carefully, the way you hand a lit candle to someone. Ivy thanked him. She called him Beck. Beckett did not correct her. He had not let anyone call him Beck since his sister. Declan went back to his bolt. He did not trust his eyes at the moment. Ms. Ashford arrived at 5 in a second-hand Honda and got out carrying an armful of affidavits. She stopped on the sidewalk and looked at the 40 bikers, the Victorian being rebuilt by hand in front of her, the children everywhere, the old man from down the street holding a board for a tattooed man named Torch, and she set her briefcase on the sidewalk and laughed out loud, a short, surprised, delighted laugh. "Mr. Morrow," she called. He came down off the porch. "We have a hearing date." "When?" "Wednesday, 10 a.m. Courtroom 3. Judge Calloway is presiding. She has read our emergency motion. She has frozen all pending placements. Beckett, Rowan, Finn, and Sage do not move anywhere on Friday." He exhaled. He had not known he was holding his breath for 3 days. "And there's more." "More what?" "I subpoenaed Bright Path's billing records. We got them this morning. Evelyn Delacroix has been on their private consultancy payroll for 11 years, off the county books. Proof. Paper signed, notarized." "Oh my God. Mr. Morrow, one more thing." "Yeah, Delacroix knows we have it." His face went cold. "How?" "Her attorney called my office an hour ago to ask what was on the evidence list. I didn't tell him. But they know we have something. That means they will come with something. Be ready. Anything in your past, in Miss Pritchard's past, in the history of this house, in the history of any of these kids, they will use it. Be ready." "Understood. There is one other thing I have to ask." "Go." "Ivy Sutton. What do we know about her biological mother?" Declan's stomach tightened. Her biological mother surrendered custody when Ivy was 2. There was a file. Nora showed me. The mother had a drug issue. She signed the papers voluntarily. Where is she now? "I don't know." "Find out. Fast. If Delacroix is desperate, and she is, she may reach for that card." He did not sleep that night. He lay on the pull-out couch in the den and watched the ceiling fan turn, and he thought about the worst thing he could imagine, which was standing in a courtroom and having to watch a stranger take Ivy Sutton by the hand and walk her out a side door. He thought about it hard, deliberately, like a man biting down on a bad tooth to know exactly how much it would hurt. He thought about what he would do if it happened, whether he could survive it, whether she could. At 4 in the morning, he got up, put on his boots, and drove 2 hours to Dayton in the dark. On Tuesday morning, he and Harriet Ashford, who had met him at a diner off the interstate with a go-cup of bad coffee, knocked on an apartment door above a laundromat. The woman who answered the door was in her 30s, thin with Ivy's eyes. She held the door half-closed at first. She looked tired but not high. On the counter behind her sat a Bible, a stack of bills, and a chip that read 2 years. "I'm Tara Monroe," she said. "Why are you here?" Ashford was professional and gentle. Declan stood a step back and let her work. "Miss Monroe, we represent a child who is currently in the foster care system. We have reason to believe that a county caseworker may attempt to contact you in the next 48 hours and ask you to participate in a custody action. We wanted to give you a heads up." Tara Monroe's face went white. "Ivy," she said. "Yes, ma'am." She sat down on the arm of her couch. She pressed her hand to her chest. "I'm sober 2 years," she said. "I've been sober 2 years. I signed those papers because I knew I couldn't do right by her. I wanted better for her than me. Whoever's got her, I pray every night they're good to her. I don't." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to take her back. I want her to have a life. Is somebody trying to get me to come take her? Someone might. I won't do it. I won't. Ma'am, sir, I don't care what they offer me. I will not sign." "Ms. Monroe," Ashford said, "would you be willing to say that on the stand under oath in a courtroom tomorrow?" Tara Monroe looked up. "Is my little girl safe?" "She is safe, ma'am. She is loved. She is living in a home where a woman reads her bedtime stories every single night, and a man who is standing right here fixes her teddy bear's arm when it comes off." Tara Monroe turned her gaze to Declan. "You take care of her," she said. "Yes, ma'am." She used to hum a little song. "She still does." Tara's eyes filled. "My mother sang it to me. I sang it to Ivy. She told me her mother sang it. You'll tell her, someday, when she's old enough." "Yes, ma'am." She stood. "I'll come to the courtroom," she said. "I'll say whatever you need me to say, under oath, anything." Then she looked at Declan and her chin trembled, and she added very small, "Can I see her? Just from far away, before I stand up there. I just want to know what she looks like when she eats. I haven't seen her eat since she was 2. "Ma'am," Declan said, "come to my hotel tomorrow morning. The diner at the courthouse, 7:30. She'll be there for breakfast. You can sit in the corner. You can watch her eat pancakes. She won't know." Tara Monroe put her hand over her mouth. "Thank you," she whispered. They drove home in a silence that was not quite silence. Snow had started to spit against the windshield. Ashford watched it for miles before she spoke. "Mr. Morrow." "Yeah, you are going to win this thing." "I hope so." "You are going to win this thing because you have told the truth to every single person you have talked to since I met you. In my experience, that is a superpower. You should use it." He did not answer. He drove. He thought about a woman with Ivy's eyes standing in a 1-bedroom apartment saying she did not want her daughter back. He thought about how complicated love could be. How much of it looked like leaving. How much of leaving was love. He got back to the blue house at midnight. The porch light was on. Ivy was asleep on the couch with Mr. Biscuits. Nora was knitting in a chair beside her because she did not know how else to wait. She looked up when he came in. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow." She put her knitting down. "Bear." "Yeah." "Whatever happens." "Yeah." "Thank you." He nodded. He carried Ivy up the stairs. She did not wake. Mr. Biscuits fell out of her arm halfway up, and Declan caught him without missing a step, and he tucked the bear in beside her when he laid her down, and he drew the blanket up to her chin, and he stood in the doorway for a long time watching her breathe. Then he went downstairs, and he sat at the kitchen table, and he wrote on a piece of yellow legal paper the thing he planned to say in court. He wrote it 3 times. He crossed out most of it. What remained was small and plain and true, and he folded it into his vest pocket, and he went to sleep on the couch with his boots on. On Wednesday at 10 in the morning, courtroom 3 of the Millbrook County Family Court was packed. Nora sat in the front row with Rowan Finn-Sage, June, and Ivy, all freshly scrubbed Ivy in her best blue dress, Mr. Biscuits in her lap. Behind them in 3 rows sat 20 members of the Hells Angels in clean leather vests, hair combed, hands folded. Behind them sat neighbors. Elliot Whitman, the teenager Caleb and his mother, the elderly couple with the sandwiches. Beckett and his Oakwood friends sat in the second row with a silent woman who was their assigned chaperone, and Beckett's hand was in Nora's lap. Evelyn Delacroix entered with her attorney, a man in a gray suit with a forgettable face. They sat at the respondent's table. Harriet Ashford sat at the petitioner's table. Declan sat beside her. Judge Althea Calloway entered. She was 72, compact, with close-cropped silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of calm that came from having seen the worst of every story and still getting up in the morning. "Please be seated," she said. The room sat. "I have read the petition," the judge said. "I have read the emergency motion. I have read the caseworker's response. We will be here for as long as it takes. Miss Ashford, your opening." Ashford stood. "Your Honor, this is a case about children being moved from stable placements into private agency facilities for financial reasons. We will prove that senior caseworker Evelyn Delacroix has, over a period of 11 years, received off-the-books payments from Bright Path Solutions totaling over $120,000 in exchange for funneling children from county-run foster homes into Bright Path's private placements at 4 times the state rate. We will prove that her pattern of recommendations has no basis in the welfare of the children who, in every case, were thriving in their placements before being removed. And we will prove that this week she attempted to remove 4 such children: Beckett Rollins, Rowan Bell, Finn Harper, and Sage Whitfield, to 4 different cities, disrupting their schooling, their support structures, and in some cases, their only experience of stability. We ask this court to halt those placements, to open a review of all Bright Path transfers for the past 11 years, and to refer Ms. Delacroix's conduct to the Attorney General's Office for Criminal Investigation. Delacroix's attorney stood. "Your Honor, the state's case is speculative. The petitioner relies on the word of a foster parent with a financial interest in retaining placements and on allegations made by a civilian, a member of a motorcycle gang with criminal history. We will call a witness today who will demonstrate that the Sutton child in particular has been placed inappropriately in the Pritchard home as the child's biological mother wishes to reclaim custody." Ashford's face did not move. She had expected this card. Declan's hand tightened on his knee. "Call your witness," the judge said. Tara Monroe came through the door. She did not look at Delacroix. She did not look at Delacroix's attorney. She walked straight to the witness stand with her eyes on the floor, and she sat, and she took the oath, and then she lifted her face and looked at the judge. "Ma'am," she said, "I need to say something before he asks me anything." Delacroix's attorney stiffened. "You may speak, Ms. Monroe," said the judge. "On Monday, a woman in a Navy suit came to my apartment in Dayton. I have never seen her before. She told me my daughter, who I surrendered for adoption 3 years ago, was in a placement that was unsafe. She said if I came to court and asked for Ivy back, the state would return her to me, and I would also receive $1,000 for my trouble. I told her I needed to think. I did not give her an answer. Yesterday, 2 lawyers came to my door. They did not offer me money. They did not tell me what to say. They asked me if I would come to court and tell the truth. I said yes. Ma'am, Your Honor, I am 2 years sober. I surrendered custody of my daughter because I knew I was not in a position to raise her. I do not want her back. I want her to have a better life than I could give her, and I am willing to say so under oath today for the record. The woman in the Navy suit is sitting at that table," she pointed. Every head in the courtroom turned. Evelyn Delacroix went very, very still. Delacroix's attorney half rose. "Your Honor, this is—" "Sit down, counsel," Judge Calloway said. "Ms. Monroe, I will ask you to identify the individual you just pointed to for the record." The woman in the navy suit sitting next to that gentleman in the gray tie. Evelyn Delacroix. I know it's her because she gave me her card. She held up the card. Ms. Ashford, please collect and mark as People's Exhibit A. Ashford did. Continue. That's all, ma'am. Except... Tara paused. Your Honor, my daughter is a little girl who hums a song my mother sang to me. If this courtroom could please leave her with the woman who has been reading her bedtime stories, I would be grateful for the rest of my life. She stepped down. As she passed the petitioner's table, she did not look at Ivy. She could not look at Ivy. Her jaw was trembling too hard. Declan saw the trembling. He saw what it cost her not to look. And he understood finally at 45 years old that not all leaving was abandonment. Sometimes leaving was love. Harriet Ashford stood. Your Honor, she said, the petitioner calls Nora Pritchard. Nora took the stand. She was sworn in. She answered Ashford's questions calmly. She described her home, her 18 years as a foster mother, the children who had passed through it. She described the pattern she had documented placements taken from her in their 7th or 8th month, always to Bright Path, always after behavioral reviews written by Evelyn Delacroix. Delacroix's attorney cross-examined her. He tried to imply she was motivated by the per diem payments she received. Nora looked at him steadily. Counsel, she said, every one of those children costs me more than the state pays. I buy their shoes out of my own money. I buy their birthday presents. I work nights at the diner on Route 14 to make up the difference. If you can find a cheaper way for me to love 6 children, I'd love to hear it. The courtroom was silent. The attorney sat down. Ashford called Declan. He took the stand. He set his hand on the Bible. He swore. He sat. He told the truth. About his record. About the club. About his childhood. About the night he had heard a little girl scream and had stopped his bike. About the morning he had walked into the kitchen and seen the crack in the floor shaped like Florida. About Twin Oaks. About his mother who was alive and who had not abandoned him and who hummed a song that was the same song his newest friend hummed, and that his newest friend was 5 years old and was named Ivy Sutton and was sitting in the front row with a teddy bear whose arm he had sewn back on. Delacroix's attorney rose for cross-examination. Mr. Morrow, you have 2 prior convictions. Yes, both for assault. Both misdemeanors, both over 20 years old, both were bar fights. I was young and stupid. Are you still young and stupid? Just stupid, counsel. Someone in the gallery laughed. The judge did not silence them. You are a member of a motorcycle club commonly classified as an outlaw organization. I am a member of the Hells Angels Millbrook chapter. You are aware of this organization's reputation. I am aware of many things about my club, counsel. I am also aware of the 40 men behind me who in the last 72 hours put a new roof on a foster home, rewired its kitchen, and submitted sworn affidavits to this court. If that reputation bothers you, I would ask you to consider which reputation is more useful to these children today. Delacroix's attorney paused. He tried one more angle. Mr. Morrow, do you believe a man with your history should be permitted to exert influence over vulnerable children? Declan looked at Ivy. Ivy was looking back. She held up Mr. Biscuits, and the bear's re-sewn arm flopped once, and she mouthed silently, "Bear." Declan turned to the attorney. He drew the folded yellow paper from his vest pocket. He did not read from it. He simply held it in his hand where he could feel the weight of the words he had written at midnight. I believe, he said, that a man with my history should be the first one asking that question, and I believe I ask it every single day. I am not a substitute for the good men these children deserve. I am a man who showed up, and I will keep showing up, and I would rather be judged by that, sir, than by anything I did when I was 22. He stepped down. Ashford had one more card. Your Honor, she said, The petitioner moves to enter the billing records of Bright Path Solutions, subpoenaed and authenticated into evidence. These records document 11 years of off-the-books payments to Evelyn Delacroix, totaling $123,742. She set the packet on the judge's bench. Delacroix's attorney did not object. He could not. Judge Calloway read for a long time. The courtroom did not breathe. Somewhere a heating vent ticked. Ivy leaned her head against Nora's shoulder and did not make a sound. At last the judge set the packet down. "I am going to make several rulings from the bench," she said. First, the emergency stay on the placements of Beckett Rollins, Rowan Bell, Finn Harper, and Sage Whitfield is continued indefinitely. These children will remain in the care of Nora Pritchard pending a full review of their case files, which I will be conducting personally. Second, I am ordering a full audit of every Bright Path Solutions placement made in this county in the past 11 years. Third, the conduct of Evelyn Delacroix, as documented in the exhibits entered today, will be referred to the Attorney General of the State of Ohio for criminal investigation effective at the close of this hearing. Ms. Delacroix, you are relieved of all case responsibilities as of this moment. Fourth, she looked over her glasses. Regarding the minor child Ivy Sutton, the biological mother has declined to seek reinstatement of custody and has on the record endorsed the continuation of the current placement. The child will remain with Nora Pritchard. Additionally, the court takes note of the role played in this matter by Mr. Declan Morrow. Mr. Morrow, you have purchased the property next door to the Pritchard home, I am told. Yes, Your Honor. For what purpose? To be there, Your Honor, for as long as they need me. Then I will direct Ms. Ashford to prepare for my signature an order granting Mr. Morrow supplemental guardian status with respect to the minor child Ivy Sutton pending the standard home study. Pending. Is that clear? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Morrow, if any of your past resurfaces in any new form, any new offense, any new disruption, I will revoke this faster than you can restart that motorcycle of yours. Is that also clear? Crystal, Your Honor. Good. She looked at Ivy. Young lady. Ivy sat up straight. I understand you have a bear. His name is Mr. Biscuits, Your Honor. Mr. Biscuits, a fine name. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Biscuits is permitted in my courtroom any day he chooses to visit. Thank you, Your Honor. Judge Calloway lifted her gavel. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. The room erupted. Not loudly, not in cheers, in something better. In the low roar of people who had not known they were holding their breath, finally letting it go. Nora turned to Ivy and lifted her up in both arms, and Ivy buried her face in her neck. Beckett, 3 rows back, grinned like a boy who had forgotten how to, and it was a face Declan was going to remember for the rest of his life. Rowan hugged Finn. Sage took June's hand. The Hells Angels stood, all 20 of them, and applauded slowly like a benediction. Grizzly put his arm around Rook. Rook took off his glasses and wiped his eyes on his sleeve. Evelyn Delacroix did not move. She sat at the respondent's table and stared straight ahead. A sheriff's deputy was already walking toward her down the aisle. Declan stepped out from behind the petitioner's table. Ivy saw him. She wriggled out of Nora's arms and ran. He caught her in the aisle and lifted her clean off the floor. She pressed Mr. Biscuits against his cheek and said, "Bear, bear, bear, bear," like the word was a prayer, and she only knew the one. "I know, kid," he said. "I know." He carried her out of the courtroom. The Hells Angels fell in behind him. On the courthouse steps, Tara Monroe stood off to the side, half turned as if trying to become invisible. Declan saw her. He stopped. He turned. Ivy was still in his arms, her face pressed to his neck, her small arms wrapped so tight around him that his vest was bunching at the shoulder. He looked at Tara for a long moment. Tara shook her head slow a no, that was really a please. He nodded. He did not carry Ivy over. He just stood there in the cold November sunlight on the steps of the Millbrook County Family Court, holding her so Tara could see her. So Tara could watch her child laugh finally. Quiet but true. As Grizzly came down the steps behind them and set a gentle hand on Ivy's back and said in a voice meant for her, "You ready for some ice cream, little ma'am?" "Yes," Ivy said into Declan's neck. "But Mr. Biscuits gets a bite first." "Mr. Biscuits gets whatever Mr. Biscuits wants." Declan looked back at Tara. Tara Monroe pressed her hand to her mouth, and she nodded once, and she mouthed silently, "Thank you," and she turned, and she walked down the steps, and she did not look back because that was the only way she could keep walking, and some love is like that, and some leaving is too. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening that smelled like wood smoke and the first promise of snow, the Blue House on Pine Hollow Street held a supper that spilled out into the backyard. Fairy lights were strung from the oak to the garage to the fence. Bear and Hammer had straightened the Saturday before. Long folding tables ran the length of the yard. On them sat turkeys and ham and a dozen casseroles from neighbors and a tray of brownies from Caleb's mother and a pie from Elliot Whitman, who had turned out against all odds to be lonely and who was sitting at the end of the long table now laughing at something Diesel was telling him. 40 bikers had come. Beckett was there, and the Oakwood kids who were in the process of being transferred, all of them to placements the court was supervising personally. Rowan was showing Torch a magic trick. Finn was teaching June to throw a football badly. Sage was sitting in Nora's lap, quiet and calm, eating a dinner roll in small, deliberate bites. Rook had brought his record player out onto the back porch and was playing old Otis Redding, and Grizzly, who could not dance, was dancing anyway with Nora's elderly neighbor, Mrs. Whitman, widow of Elliot's cousin, and the unofficial matriarch of Pine Hollow Street, who laughed so hard she had to sit down. Ms. Harriet Ashford was there. She had taken off her suit jacket and was arguing cheerfully with Rook about the merits of a particular Supreme Court dissent. And in the seat beside Ivy, in a lavender cardigan, in a wheelchair, Declan had pushed up the ramp the Angels had built that afternoon, sat Maggie Morrow. She had not remembered him. She still did not. But the kind nurse at Twin Oaks had said when Declan had asked if she could come to Thanksgiving, "Mr. Morrow, I don't see why not. She loves company. She loves music. She will not remember it tomorrow, but she will enjoy it tonight." It had taken Declan 3 phone calls and 1 in-person visit to Dr. Lenora Price, the psychiatrist who had managed his mother's care for 17 years, to make it happen. Dr. Price was in her 60s and had gray hair she wore in a practical bob, and had spoken to Declan with a directness he had not expected. "Mr. Morrow," she had said, "your mother was admitted in 1988 following what at the time was called a psychotic break. Today, we would call it an acute episode of untreated postpartum depression compounded by paranoid features. She believed for a period of weeks that she was being followed. She believed at one point that she was going to harm you. She had the presence of mind to call a social worker and ask to be taken somewhere she could not reach you. She wanted very specifically to protect you from herself. She did not abandon you. She was extremely sick. She has continued to be unwell in various ways for the rest of her life. She is now in the early to middle stages of dementia. She is not going to recover. She is, however, not suffering. She is peaceful. She hums. She does not remember the worst parts of her own life, which is in my experience a mercy for her and a grief for everyone who loves her. You will be sad about this. You are allowed to be. But please, Mr. Morrow, do not be angry at her anymore. She has paid many times over for a thing she did because she was ill and afraid and trying in the only way she could figure out to save you. Declan had sat in Dr. Price's office and had not spoken for a full minute. "Thank you," he had said finally. "You're welcome. Can I bring her to Thanksgiving?" "Yes, I think she would like that. Bring a blanket. She gets cold." He had brought a blanket. He had brought two. And now she was sitting at his mother's old dining table in the backyard of her own house, under fairy lights, strung by men she did not know, with a small girl humming the song she had sung to her own son 37 years ago, and Dr. Price had been right. She was not suffering. She was peaceful. She was home. She did not know it, but she was. Ivy had taken to Maggie the way small things take to each other. "Do you know a song?" Ivy had asked her, climbing into the chair beside hers at the beginning of supper. "I know a few," Maggie had said. "Can I hear one?" Maggie had sung the little round tune, Pink and Gold, the one that curled up at the end like a question. Ivy had joined in on the second go, their voices one thin and high and young, one thin and high and old, had met in the middle, and for a moment Declan, watching from the porch with a plate in his hand, had to look away. Now, as the lights came on in earnest and the last of the sun bled from the sky, he found himself standing beside Nora at the back step. "It's loud," she said. "It's good loud. It's good loud." She sipped her cider. "Bear. Yeah, we're going to need more plates. I'll go get some. In a minute. In a minute." They stood in silence. Behind them, Otis sang about a dock by a bay. Rook and Ashford argued. Grizzly spun Mrs. Whitman in a slow two-step. Ivy leaned against Maggie Morrow's knee, humming. "When I was a boy," Declan said, "I used to sit on this back step and wait for her to come home." "I know. She never did." "I know. She's here now. She is. She doesn't know it. She knows it more than you think, Bear." He watched his mother humming with a 5-year-old he had met exactly 3 weeks ago, and he felt something in his chest that he had not had a word for in 45 years, and still did not accept that it was warm and it was steady, and it had the shape of a hand on a thumb. "Nora," he said. "Yeah. Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why'd you buy this house back then? You said it needed work, was empty 5 years. Why this one?" She was quiet a moment. She looked at the sky, not at him. "Because it was the one I could afford," she said. "And because the man who showed it to me said it had been empty a long time and that nobody wanted it, and when he said that I stood on the porch and I thought, that's not right. This house wants somebody. I could feel it wanting somebody. I was 24. I did not have a good reason. I had a feeling." "A feeling?" "Yeah." "Huh. Bear." "Yeah, maybe it was wanting you." He did not answer that. He could not. Ivy looked up, across the yard, caught his eye. She lifted her hand and waved. He waved back. "Bear," she called, "come sit, there's pie." "Coming, kid." He went down the porch steps. The fairy lights swung. The Otis Redding song ended. Someone started another. Mrs. Whitman kissed Grizzly on the cheek because she was 81 and had decided she was allowed. Finn tackled June. Sage laughed a real laugh for the first time anyone in that yard had ever heard. Declan Morrow walked across the grass of the backyard of the house he had fled at 18, and he sat down at a long folding table beside a small girl in a lavender dress and a woman in a lavender cardigan who did not remember him but who knew somehow to pat his hand, and a foster mother who had built a family out of a house full of ghosts, and a boy named Beckett who was laughing now, laughing hard because Rowan was doing a terrible magic trick. Ivy pushed a plate of pie in front of him. "I saved you the biggest piece," she said. "Thanks, kid." "Bear." "Yeah, this is our forever house, right?" He looked around the yard, at his club, at his neighbors, at his mother, at the lights and the faces and the life. "Yeah, kid," he said, "this is our forever house." She nodded, satisfied, and picked up her fork. Somewhere above them, in a sky gone purple and soft, the first star of the evening came out. They ate for a long time. Seconds. Thirds. Beckett had 2 pieces of pie because Nora said so, and he ate them like he was afraid someone would take them away. And then he ate a 3rd because Grizzly on principle gave him his. Rowan performed his magic trick again. This time it worked. Everyone clapped too loud the way you clap for a brave kid doing anything, and Rowan's ears turned red, but he smiled. Maggie Morrow drifted in and out of the evening the way a candle flickers. Sometimes she was there asking June her name for the 4th time, patient delighted each time to hear it. Sometimes she was somewhere else, somewhere warm and kind behind her eyes, her fingers tapping the rhythm of a song only she could hear. Declan sat beside her and let her go wherever she needed to go, and each time she came back he was there, and each time she asked his name he gave it to her clean, and once, only once. Near the end of the evening, she looked at him sidelong and said, "Declan, that's my son's name." "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Oh," she said, and her hand reached out and found his, and her fingers closed around his thumb, the way Ivy's did, because maybe some things ran in families, even when the families did not know each other, and she said, "Oh, good, that's very good." She fell asleep 10 minutes later in her wheelchair, her head against Ivy's shoulder, and Ivy did not move for an hour because she did not want to wake her new grandmother up. The Oakwood kids left at 9. Their chaperone was a woman named Diane, new to the county, who had replaced Delacroix on a temporary contract. She was 40, gentle, a little nervous in the presence of so many motorcycles, but she smiled at Nora when she came to collect her charges, and she shook Declan's hand like she meant it, and she promised him quietly that the placements for Beckett and the others were being reviewed with sensitivity and that every effort was being made to let them stay together here in Millbrook. Declan thanked her. He did not say more. He did not want to push. Beckett was the last of the Oakwood kids to leave. He came over to Declan where he sat beside his mother. "Bear, kid." "Thanks." "For what?" Beckett shrugged. He did not answer. He did not have to. He turned to leave, then stopped and came back and reached out one hand and set it for just a second on the shoulder of Declan's leather vest, the way Ivy had done that first night, as if to seal something. Then he walked down the driveway with Diane, and he did not look back because looking back was hard, and he was learning slowly that sometimes you did not have to. At 10 o'clock, Grizzly and the Angels started their bikes. 40 engines filled Pine Hollow Street for the second time in 2 weeks. Lights came on in every window. People stepped out onto porches to watch. The bikes rolled slowly away down the street in a long, staggered line, the taillights blinking red like the slow beat of some enormous heart. And when the sound of them finally faded around the corner of Maple, the whole neighborhood was quiet, and the stars were out, and Ivy was asleep on the back porch swing with her head in Nora's lap. Declan wheeled his mother out to the van the nurse from Twin Oaks had sent, and he kissed her forehead, and she smiled at him, vague and sweet, and said, "You will visit, young man." "Every week, ma'am." "That would be lovely." The van pulled away. The taillights receded. He stood at the curb a long moment. When he turned around, the blue Victorian was lit up from inside warm and gold, every window burning, and the one next door, the small ranch house with the "Sold to D. Morrow" sign still stuck in the front yard, was dark but waiting. He walked up the driveway of his own house. He unlocked the front door. The smell inside was of fresh paint because he had spent the afternoon before rolling a coat of eggshell white over the living room walls. He had not furnished it yet. Just a mattress on the floor, a lamp, a small bookshelf. The kitchen had a coffee pot and 2 mugs. The back window looked out over a small yard, and beyond it, over the fence, he could see the string of fairy lights still burning in Nora's trees. He stood in the middle of the empty living room. He thought about a boy of 8 sitting on a porch 2 houses away, waiting for a car that did not come. He thought about that boy for a long time. He did not hate him anymore. Then he went back next door because Nora had texted that Ivy had woken up on the swing and asked for him, and he was not at 45 years old going to keep her waiting. By the time winter settled down on Millbrook in earnest, the Blue Victorian had become a different kind of house than it had ever been. It did not stop being loud. It did not stop being messy. It did not stop overflowing with children, but it stopped being fragile. There were, to be sure, bad days. Ivy had a nightmare in the second week of December and could not be consoled until Declan carried her down the stairs and sat with her on the couch and turned on the television to a cooking show at low volume, because the sound of a calm woman making soup was, for reasons that were neither of their businesses, the thing that could put her back to sleep. She slept against his chest for 2 hours. He did not move. He did not mind. The woman on television made soup and more soup and then a cake and then soup again, and somewhere around midnight, Declan closed his eyes too, and when he woke in the morning, Nora had put a blanket over both of them and a cup of coffee on the side table, which she had learned by then to leave where he could reach it without moving. Sage had a harder time. She had moments Nora had told Declan plainly on the second night in which she would not speak sometimes for hours, and in which she would not accept being touched by anyone, including Nora. On a Tuesday in late November, she locked herself in the upstairs bathroom at 4 in the afternoon and did not come out until 7. Nora did not force the door. She sat in the hall with her back against the wall and read a novel out loud, chapter after chapter, so that Sage on the other side of the door would know she was not alone. Declan came home halfway through. He sat down in the hall too. He did not say anything. He did not have to. After an hour, Sage opened the door 2 inches and said, "Keep reading." Nora kept reading. The door stayed 2 inches open. Sage listened. When she finally came out, she went straight to Declan, wordless, and leaned her forehead against his shoulder for exactly 4 seconds, and then went to her room without speaking. That was all. That was everything. That was Sage. There were good days, too. More and more of them. The first snow came on a Saturday morning light and unexpected, and Ivy shrieked when she saw it and ran outside in her pajamas and bare feet. Declan, who was drinking coffee on the porch, scooped her up and put her back inside and told her she could not catch snowflakes without shoes. Ivy put on shoes. She came back out. She caught a snowflake. She brought it inside on her sleeve to show him, and by the time she got to him, it had melted, and she was devastated, and he explained snowflakes, and she forgave the universe slowly in stages, and by lunchtime she was making snow angels in the front yard with Finn and June, and Declan was standing at the kitchen window watching them, and Nora was standing beside him, and she said without looking at him, "This is the good part." "I know," he said. "I wanted to make sure you knew. I know." Rowan joined the middle school chess club. He placed 3rd in his first tournament. A photograph of him standing on a plastic podium holding a small trophy was taped to the refrigerator beneath Ivy's drawing of Bear. Finn, who had been reading 2 grade levels below his age, caught up to his class by Christmas, because Sparky came over twice a week and sat at the kitchen table with him and read aloud, patient and unhurried, and nobody laughed when Finn sounded out the hard words, and in a house where nobody laughed at you, you sometimes forgot to be ashamed. Sage stopped flinching. She did not stop being watchful, that Nora said would not go away for years yet, if ever, but she stopped flinching. That was the beginning. June won a ribbon at a school art show for a painting she had made of a cat riding a whale. The ribbon was yellow, which was 2nd place, but she was 6. and she had signed her name in the corner in purple crayon, and Declan bought a frame for it and hung it above the fireplace because some things deserve to be framed. Beckett and the other Oakwood kids were quietly consolidated at a new group home on the other side of town, run by a couple named Frank and Elena Dumont, who had fostered for 23 years and taken the job at Oakwood on a 6-month emergency contract that everyone, including them, hoped would become permanent. Beckett ate breakfast at Nora's every Saturday. He and Ivy had developed a standing appointment to walk Mr. Biscuits to the playground and swing together slow with the rest of them trailing along behind. On Beckett's 12th birthday in early December, the Dumonts threw him a small party, and Nora took Ivy and Declan drove them, and Grizzly showed up with a cake so large it nearly did not fit through the front door. Beckett cried when he blew out the candles. Nobody teased him. He was a kid. He was finally a kid. Harriet Ashford argued a motion to expand the Bright Path investigation to 3 neighboring counties and won. 2 state senators called her office. One offered her a job. She turned it down. "I like it here," she told Declan over coffee. "The work is real." Evelyn Delacroix was indicted on 24 counts of fraud, 1 count of official corruption, and 2 counts of child endangerment. Her trial was set for spring. She did not speak publicly. Her house went on the market. Somebody bought it and painted it cheerful yellow. And Maggie Morrow, every Saturday morning at 9, received a visitor. Her son Declan came to see her with a small girl named Ivy Sutton, who he always introduced as his friend because the word for what Ivy was to them had not been invented yet. The 3 of them would sit in her bright room, and Ivy would climb up on the bed beside Maggie, and they would hum the little song together. Sometimes Maggie remembered she had a son. Sometimes she did not. But every single time, without fail, when Declan stood up to leave, she took his hand and she squeezed his thumb and she said, "Thank you for coming, young man. Please do come back." And he always came back. In the middle of January, there was a blizzard. 3 feet of snow came down on Millbrook in 20 hours. Pine Hollow Street disappeared. Cars vanished. Mailboxes became anonymous white humps. Power went out at 4 in the afternoon on a Tuesday and did not come back for 2 days. The blue Victorian ran on its wood stove and on every blanket in the county, and on candles Nora had been saving since 2019, and on the company of 8 people packed into one warm kitchen, eating soup Declan had made by the light of a flashlight. Ivy sat in his lap wrapped in a quilt. She had Mr. Biscuits tucked into the crook of one arm. With her other hand, she was holding his thumb. She was halfway to sleep. "Bear," she said. "Yeah, kid." "What if the power never comes back?" "It will." "But what if it doesn't?" "Then we keep the stove going and we keep each other warm and we wait. And the other people, the ones alone." He kissed the top of her head. "We'll check on them tomorrow." In the morning, the angels came. They rolled up Pine Hollow on snowmobiles at first light because snow did not care what a motorcycle was. They had coffee, they had firewood, they had a generator, they had hot sandwiches from the Rusty Nail. They cleared the driveways of every house on the street. Declan and Grizzly shoveled Elliot Whitman's walk, then knocked on Mrs. Whitman's door, then made it to every house on the block by sunset. When they got to the house at the end of the street, the one with the broken mailbox, Grizzly asked who lived there. Declan looked at it for a long moment. He did not know. He realized he had not known the names of his neighbors as a boy either. He had been too tired then to bother. He was not tired now. He knocked on the door. A woman in her 60s answered in a housecoat and slippers, alarmed to see 2 large men in leather on her porch surrounded by snow. "Ma'am," Declan said. "My name is Declan Morrow. I live down the street. This is my friend Grizzly. We are clearing walks today and checking on people." Do you need anything? Hot food medication company. The woman stared at them for a long second. Then her face crumpled just a little because she had not spoken to another human being in 3 days, and she said, I would love a cup of coffee. I haven't had one since Monday. They brought her coffee. They sat with her 20 minutes. Her name was Doris. She had lived on Pine Hollow for 41 years. She had known, she said, the woman who had lived in the blue house before Nora. The Morrow woman. She had been sorry when they took her away. She had always wondered what happened to the little boy. Declan listened. He did not tell her. He did not have to. When he and Grizzly walked back down the snow-lined street, Grizzly said, Bear. Yeah, you know what you are, brother. No, you are the thing you needed. Declan did not answer. He did not have to. The next spring, when the snow was gone and the maple tree by Nora's porch was putting out its first bronze leaves, Declan Morrow adopted Ivy Sutton. Not legally, not fully, not yet. The paperwork for supplemental guardianship had gone through in January. The next level was adoption, and Judge Calloway had told him plainly that it would take time, and that it would require a full home study, and that it would require Nora's explicit blessing, and that it would require above all Ivy's. Nora blessed it at the kitchen table with tears streaming down her face and her hand over his, because she had wanted this, she said, since the night he had walked up her steps with a little girl holding his thumb. The home study came back spotless. Judge Calloway read it and scheduled a hearing. The night before the hearing, Declan knelt down in the living room in front of Ivy, who was in her pajamas with Mr. Biscuits under one arm. Kid, he said, I need to ask you something. Okay. Tomorrow Judge Calloway is going to ask you if you want me to be one of your parents. You are. Not officially. Tomorrow she asks officially. Oh, so I need to know first. Is that what you want? Ivy considered. It was a big question. She considered for a long time. Mr. Biscuits listened gravely. Will I still live with Miss Nora? Yes, Miss Nora is your mom. She always will be. Can I still live here? Always. And you'll still live next door? Yes. And you'll still come to breakfast? Every morning. And at Twin Oaks, can I still bring Mr. Biscuits? Every Saturday. She thought. And you'll be my dad too, if you'll have me. Ivy leaned forward and put her small hand flat on his chest, right over the Hells Angels patch the way she had that first night. You already are, she said. The next day in courtroom 3, Judge Althea Calloway looked down from her bench at a 5-year-old girl in a lavender dress holding a teddy bear with a re-sewn arm, and asked her gently if it was her wish that the man named Declan Morrow be recognized by this court as her legal parent, in addition to Nora Pritchard. Ivy Sutton stood up in her seat. She was too small to be seen over the railing, so Declan lifted her up and set her on the bench beside him. Yes, Ivy said to the judge, very clearly, very calmly. Please. And you, Mr. Morrow. With everything I have, Your Honor. Judge Calloway signed the papers in front of her. She looked over her glasses at the two of them. Mr. Morrow. Yes, Your Honor. Do not make me regret this. No, Your Honor. I did not think so. She lifted her gavel. Petition granted. The gavel came down. The summer after, on a Saturday in July, so hot, the asphalt of the driveway shimmered. Declan Morrow taught Ivy Sutton Morrow to ride a two-wheeler. It was a bike he had bought her for her 6th birthday. It was purple. It had a basket on the front with a plastic flower on it. It had, according to Ivy, a whole personality. Its name was Moonbeam. He ran alongside her, one hand on the back of the seat, the way his own father had never done for him. He was sweating through his t-shirt. His bad knee ached. He did not care. Kick and lean, kid, he called. Kick your own legs, otherwise it's just hanging. She laughed. She kicked. She leaned. He let go. For 3 entire seconds, Ivy Sutton Morrow flew. Then she hit a bump and went down in the grass, laughing, and Mr. Biscuits, who had been strapped to the handlebars, bounced into a geranium bush, and Declan jogged up and picked her up and set her on her feet and dusted off her elbows and said, "You did it, kid. You flew." "I flew," Ivy said. She flew, and then she fell, and then she flew again, and then she crashed into Mrs. Whitman's mailbox, and the bike paint left a small purple smear on the metal, and Mrs. Whitman came out with lemonade and told Declan she would have been disappointed if the mailbox had gotten through a whole summer without a dent, because dents meant children, and children meant a street was living. That evening, sitting on the porch with Nora and a tired, sunburned, triumphant Ivy asleep against his chest, Declan looked up at the sky and thought about all the nights he had sat on this same porch waiting, about his mother who was not dead and who hummed a little round tune, about his father who was not evil, just broken, just alone, about himself who had spent 27 years on the road running from this street, about the boy he had been who had not deserved what the world did to him and whom he could not go back and save, but whom he could in a way honor now by not letting it happen to anyone else he could reach, and about the little girl asleep on his chest whose heart beat against his heart through 2 layers of flannel and who had saved him as surely as he had saved her, because that was how it worked. That was how it always worked. You did not rescue a child. You met her and you stayed, and in the staying both of you were rescued. "Bear," Nora said softly. "Yeah, you're crying." "I know. Is it bad?" "No." "Okay." They sat a long time. The fireflies came out. The last of the sun went down behind the Whitman house. Ivy stirred once in her sleep, whispered something that sounded like moonbeam, and sank back against him. Across the street, a lamp came on in an upstairs window. Next door in Declan's house, a light that he had left on all day was still burning because he had promised himself when he moved in that no house he lived in would ever be dark again, when a child might look up at it and need to know somebody was home. Pine Hollow Street was quiet. A breeze moved the leaves of the maple tree. In the distance, very faintly, came the low rumble of a motorcycle not coming, not going, just passing through on some other road and carrying somebody home. Autumn turned into winter, and winter into another spring. The house on Pine Hollow filled and changed and filled again. Rowan turned 12. Finn's 2 front teeth finally finished coming in, crooked perfect. Sage began to speak more often, first to June, then to Ivy, then one astonishing Sunday evening at dinner to all of them in a long and considered sentence about why she thought the dog next door barked more on cloudy days. Everyone listened. Nobody made a big deal of it. That was the right thing to do. That was how you let a scared thing come out of hiding, by pretending you had not seen it appear. Beckett grew 2 inches in 3 months and broke his mother's memory in a way that was not sad exactly. Nora found him crying in the kitchen one night in January quietly, without drama, after a Saturday visit that had gone long. He did not tell her what it was about at first. She waited. She handed him a dish towel to wipe his face. Finally, he said, "I keep forgetting what she looked like." He meant his sister. Nora sat down beside him. She said, "That doesn't mean you loved her less. It means you're getting older. You'll keep some of it, not all of it. The people who loved you help you hold what you can't." Beckett did not answer. He put his head on her shoulder, which was a thing he had not done since his sister had been alive, and Nora let him sit there until he was done, and then she made him hot chocolate, and he went back to the Dumonts with 2 Ziploc bags of Nora's brownies and a note for Elena that just said, "Thank you." Maggie Morrow kept living softly in her bright room at Twin Oaks. She had a few bad weeks in February. She stopped eating. She grew confused in a way that frightened even the kind nurses. Declan came more often, sometimes twice a week. He sat and held her hand and hummed the little song, and slowly, without explanation, she came back the way she always did to the soft middle distance of her mind, where she could still recognize Ivy's voice, if not Ivy, and still smile at the sound of Declan's name, if not at the man sitting across from her. He did not ask for more. He had learned by then that asking for more was sometimes how you lost what you had. The small visits repeated added up. Love did not always look like remembering. Sometimes it looked like showing up again to a woman who would greet you as a stranger and be glad to meet you and pat your hand with a hand that was no longer strong enough to grip but was still warm. In March, Judge Calloway scheduled the adoption hearing for April. She sent Declan a letter herself on her personal stationery. It said, in part, I am pleased to inform you that your application has proceeded to the final stage. I expect this hearing to be brief, uncontested, and joyous. You may, Mr. Morrow, wear the leather vest if you wish. I have, after some consideration, decided that Mr. Biscuits may be sworn in as a witness. He would not be the strangest witness I have seated. Declan read it sitting at the kitchen table. He read it twice. Then he went outside and sat on the porch in the cold March wind with the letter in his hand and laughed quietly, for the first time in maybe ever, without anything underneath it, without sadness, without irony. Just laughed because it was funny, and because the world in small and specific places was made of good people doing good work, and one of them was a 72-year-old judge who had decided a teddy bear could be a witness in her courtroom, and nobody was going to talk her out of it. When Halloween came around again a year after the playground, Declan did what his father had never done and what Mr. Henderson had done once and remembered. He bought full-size candy bars, cases of them, hundreds. He stocked the porch of his little house next door with them, and he sat out there in his leather vest in a lawn chair, and he passed them out one bar at a time to every child who came up his walk in a costume. The line went around the block. By the end of the night, he had gone through 300 bars and 8 buckets of popcorn Nora had made on his stove. The children of Pine Hollow Street, some of whom were afraid of him at first, would whisper to each other in their costumes, "You gotta go to the Hells Angels house. They have the good candy." And they would come 2 by 2 in their sheets and their tiger ears and their princess dresses, and Declan would give each one a bar, and he would look at them for a half-second longer than was polite, because he wanted to see each one of them, really see them in a way no adult had ever seen him at that age. Ivy was a bumblebee. Finn was a ninja. Rowan was a scientist with a lab coat and chess pieces taped to his shoulders, which he said was a pun nobody had gotten except him. Sage was a ballet dancer. June was a cat riding a whale, which involved a very complicated hat. They went around the block together. Nora walked behind them with a camera that had not had film in it since 2004, but that she pretended to use anyway because it was a ritual and rituals mattered. Beckett came late. He was 12 now, which was almost too old for trick-or-treating, and he had almost not come. But Ivy had called him on the Dumont's landline at 4 in the afternoon and said in her very clear voice, "I need you to come trick-or-treat with us, Mr. Biscuit says." "Mr. Biscuit says," Beckett repeated flat. "He does." "Ivy, I don't have a costume." "I made you one. Miss Nora helped." "What is it?" "A surprise." The costume turned out to be a cardboard crown painted gold. Ivy explained at the Dumont's front door that it was because Beckett was her friend, and her friend was a king. Beckett put on the crown wordless. He wore it around the entire block. At the end of the night, he sat on the steps of Declan's house next door with Ivy, both of them eating chocolate. Ivy leaned against his arm. Beckett let her. They did not say anything. They watched the last of the little ones drift home with their plastic pumpkins, and Declan watched them from his lawn chair, and above them all the sky was cold and deep and full of stars, and he thought again for the 100th time that fall that this was the thing he had needed. All of this street, this kid, this boy, this life. The blue house watched and held its children and remembered everything and forgave everything and was at long last what it had always been meant to be. A home, a real one, for keeps.